Planet B.
Here we are with episode 4 of Cult and Culture. This episode features Juan Alderete from Racer X, Mars Volta, and a bunch of other stuff.
Yep. Dr. Octagon.
Octagon. I'm looking forward to today's podcast with Juan because we're both bass players. He recently featured me on his Pedals and Effects podcast, and I don't know, it's a trip because we have a lot of similarities, but there's so many things that are different, and his musicianship I think excels mine in so many ways, especially since he's a Grammy winner and things like that, which I probably never will ever be part of. But regardless, it's a trip because I really respect him in so many ways, and I really think his accomplishments and his involvement in so many different things is so impressive.
Yeah, he's on each side of the spectrum too, from doing so many just different projects, not just sticking to one style. And as a bass player myself, and you as well, I know a lot of bass players, and he was just on Bass Player magazine on the cover even.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so rad. Like, being a little kid, I used to read Bass Player magazine, and now my son does, because he loves the bass. And I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
It's a lot of bass happening.
Yeah.
Bass in your face.
Yeah. Yeah, 3 bass players today.
Here we are with Juan. I would prefer you to kind of introduce yourself and tell us what your resume, I guess.
Sure.
It spans quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah. All right. So my name is Juan Alderete de la Peña. I'm born in Los Angeles. And I lived in LA till I was, a little kid, 8 years old or whatever. We moved to San Diego, lived in San Diego for a year, and then went to the Bay Area. And then I kind of grew up in the Bay, and then came back to LA to go to music school, when I was 20 or whatever. And then
which school?
Musicians Institute.
Okay.
When I was in the 80s, because I'm 53 years old. So in the 80s, I was obsessed with Zappa, and I wanted to, how do you get in Frank Zappa's band? And so you got to be a good musician and sight read. I didn't know that because I didn't know how. And so I'm like, all right. But the crazy thing is, I was obsessed with Zappa, but by the time I got accepted to the school and made enough money to move down, my favorite band was Killing Joke.
Wow.
And so I didn't want to be in Zappa's band anymore. And I'm like, well, fuck, but I'm in this school. What am I going to do? Well, we're in LA, whatever. And my friend who I moved down with, we were like, maybe we should just move to London. Fuck it, So we talked about moving to London, but our parents were flipping out. And then they're like, nah, maybe we should just stick with LA. And then we started a band where it was kind of like Simple Minds meet Killing Joke, and then I meet Paul Gilbert from Racer X, and they said, I know I'm in a fucking shred metal band.
So was Racer X a band before you joined it?
No. Paul Gilbert got a record deal with this indie label called Shrapnel, who put out pretty much individuals who shredded, all the shred school dudes from that era. But Paul was always wanted to be more rock. He wanted to be in a band. He's like, I don't want it to be my name. I'd rather be in a band. He loved Van Halen. He loved AC/DC. And so when I met him, really the main reason I got in his band was because a drummer I moved to LA with got a call because Paul needed a drummer. And so he was going to go for this audition. He goes, well, my roommate's a bass player and we kind of have a band. And Paul goes, well, bring him. I need a bass player. So he hired me and he didn't hire my roommate.
No way.
Which was always weird, but yeah. And then Paul hired me because he said in my face, he goes, well, you're the first dude I've ever met who can play on bass what I play on guitar. Because I just had this ability when I was younger to just shred hella fast.
Okay.
I wasn't into it.
Yeah.
I just could do it. And, at that point too, I was like, by the time I met Paul, which was 6 months into me going to music school, I was getting way into hip hop. Because my little brother was into it.
So what year was this?
This is 80. Fuck, let me think about this. 85. Yeah, 85. March of 85, I moved to LA for music school.
So this is Run DMC, Raising Hell, and
before all that, fucking Nucleus and
First Beastie Boys license?
No, before that. So it'd be let me think about this. I got to think of like, because my little brother had a lowrider, and then when I moved to LA, he's just like, take my lowrider, I'm gonna get another lowrider. So I showed up to LA in a lowrider, and I had bumping speakers, so I would just remember what I would bump, and I would bump like Nucleus, UTFO, first LL I think was probably out by then, definitely, and then so it was kind of like all New York stuff, but it was definitely drum machine, not so much sampling, more like, that kind of shit. Yeah. And I was way into that. So when Paul would get into my lowrider, I'd always be bumping. I would listen to that snare, listen to that bass drum. And he's just like, I don't get it, Wow. But I was still like shredding because I was like, well, I want to make his record. He was making a record. I was like, fuck, I came here to make records. So make a record with this dude. So next thing I knew, for 3 years, I was shredding, like, standing in a room full of men, seeing how fast I could play, pretty much. So
it's crazy. I'm trying to wrap my head around it because I didn't realize how old you were, and then I knew about like Racer X, but when I was a little kid and I first started getting into music, so I was born in 75, so like around 85, I started discovering it, and I would always go to this record store to buy like Sex Pistols and Misfits records and stuff, and see Racer X cassettes. And I'm assuming it's the same band. And I think I saw you guys play in Phoenix at one point as a little kid, and I don't know anything. I don't remember like where or what it was.
Fucking gnarly, because we everybody goes, where'd you guys tour? We never toured.
Did you
this
ever
is
play
where
there?
we played. We played Phoenix.
Okay.
We played San Francisco, Oakland. We played LA, of course, all over the place. We played one show in Chicago. And then we played, like, I think San Luis Obispo or somewhere like that.
So kind of like where you could pretty much just go to, like, in one night.
Right. And because we couldn't tour because we didn't have a record label, tour support. Yeah. We didn't know how big we were. I mean, I think back then, if like an agent would have said, oh, you guys are doing really well, we could do so. But it wasn't like that back then. And so, we played Phoenix a couple times because we could.
Wow,
I mean, and our singer was from Phoenix.
Okay.
So he was in a band called Surgical Steel. And there's some cheesy metal movie that Surgical Steel's in. I wish I could remember what it is.
I don't know. There was like this other band, Sacred Reich, I think was from Phoenix. Or maybe it was like a show with them because I liked them. Maybe. But anyhow, it's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, because back then, too, like I love telling people this, like back then in the mid 80s and early, mid 80s or whatever, the lines were really blurry with speed metal, punk, metal. You would see that on bills. We'd see some of these bands. I'm like, whoa, these dudes are thrashing crazy. And Paul would hate that. Paul hated dissonance and all this shit. And Bruce, the other guitar player, and I would be like, oh, this is fucking awesome. Because it was all like, you just didn't know. I mean, listen to like Suicidal. Like Suicidal was like, were they metal? We're like Bad Brains on fucking ISI. Like, it's like, are they metal? Or what the fuck is this? And then it just started getting more defined. And then it's like, oh, you can't listen to that shit. You can't,
Sure.
But I mean, back then I listened to everything, like you because you wanted to do everything. I wanted to be in every band. I was like, oh fuck, I want to be in Killing Joke, but then I want to be in U2, but I also want to be in,
But even like with the Beastie Boys stuff too, like all their like there was like they had like Kerry King playing guitar on all of it,
right?
Like that's
Rick
like
Rubin has like that,
sure,
yeah.
But that like that was really because I was already kind of into metal, and I think I probably would have been inevitably into the Beastie Boys. But I remember like just being like, "Fuck, this is the best mix!" Like hearing the first Beastie Boys record and already being like really into metal, it kind of like softened it. Where I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna dig." Hip hop too, or whatever, or rap, and it was like not an issue,
Right, totally.
So that's wild. Okay, so then. So where do we go from there? What'd you do after that? Like,
so then, what happened was Racer X couldn't get a record deal because every label looked at us because even like our second Troubadour show. So it was basically like this. We did one show at the Waters Club. I don't know if you remember that venue, but a lot of punk shit came out of Watt and, that whole thing. It was in San Pedro. We played there. Like we had to sell tickets to get people there, but we put a lot of people in there. Yeah. After that, like after our first show, sold out. Because we were like musicians. We're like, yo, check these dudes, because these were like it's not just like one Yngwie Malmsteen or Eddie Van Halen. It's like every dude on their instrument is a fucking ripper. You got to see this band because I could rip, the drums could rip, guitars ripped. So it would just sell out, and so by the third show we did the Troubadour, and this is just fucking super. It was like we go there and fucking like Tommy Lee and Nikki Sixx show up, and Stephen Pearcy and somebody else from Rat show up. They all wanted to, what's this new metal that everybody's so juiced about? Because, you know, when you surge that quickly, it catches everybody. Sure. And, you know, just tons of metal dudes from that era, like Dio dudes and whatever. They're all there to see us. And we're fucking super nervous. End of the show, none of them are there. They're probably all like, oh, fuck this. This won't work. This sucks. Because it's just shred. It's like there's no songs and shit. It's all based around making sure that you see how much we rip. And it's some ways it pretty much was that. So, yeah, so just we couldn't get a record deal. But every label checked us out. Every label paid for a showcase, and, you know, and they just would call me up. Because I ran the band business and shit. And they would call me up like, if you get rid of the singer, maybe we could talk and, you know, streamline the songs. And we were just like, no, fuck you. You know, dumbasses.
That's great. I love it.
And then Paul ended up getting a call from dudes who would eventually be Mr. Big.
Oh, yeah.
So he split to do Mr. Big. So then we started a new band, the remaining members. So it was the drummer, Scott Travis, Bruce Bouillet, the other guitar player, and me. We get a different singer. And then Scott gets in Judas Priest, and he's to this day the drummer in Judas Priest. So he splits us, and Bruce and I are like, "Fuck, man, we're the losers." We kept working, and we get this singer named John Corabi, and we get signed to Hollywood Records finally after a year. This is like '92 or something, and we get signed, and then Motley Crue steals our singer. So then Bruce and I are like, "Fuck."
Wait, who was the singer?
This guy, John Corabi. He's the only guy who ever sang in Motley Crue besides Vince Neil.
Wow.
So then he ends up, you know, making tons of money. Bruce and I, Bruce and I are living in my grandmother's house in East Los Angeles. I mean, she's not there, but we're living in there. We're broke, and we're like, the fuck did we do in our prior lives to just not succeed like these dudes? And then we get a deal. I mean, they let us continue our record deal with Hollywood Records, so we get a new singer, which is like back then, finding a singer without the internet was insane.
Yeah.
We would, like, Bruce would go fly all over to go check out dudes in different club bands and shit. Eventually get some singer from New York. We make this record with, by then, like, I'm always switching my, like, what I'm into. By then, I'm way into the Beastie Boys. And the singer and the guitar player into the Black Crowes. So our kind of band ends up sounding at a weird mosh of that
What's
shit.
What's the name of this band?
That band is, we called it The Scream because the first record we did with the Motley Crue singer was in a band. I mean, that was called The Scream. So the label's like, you got to continue calling it The Scream. We're like, but we don't sound like that. And so we end up putting a record together, and then it was like Mario Caldato, who produced the Beastie Boys and mixes all this shit. He engineered and produced and mixed it. We did some tracks with the Dust Brothers, but we didn't put that on the record. I mean, we were all, I was hip hop. I go, I'm only doing it if we do this.
Whoa.
And so they were like, all right. And then that shit failed. You know, Hollywood dropped us because it was just weird. Like, because we couldn't agree. Like, there's some rock shit still, but there was some hip hop loops and shit.
How did you feel knowing that you were going to be produced by Mario C?
Oh, dude. I mean, I was just like, I was way into Check Your Head. Like, I liked the first record, of course, because I was into hip hop, but I did think that they were a little corny on the mic. But Check Your Head, fuck no. That Check Your Head was like, it fucked everybody up.
Sure.
It fucked punk people up. It fucked everybody up. That record to me is still one of the greatest records of all time. Because those dudes that they went, fuck, we're rolling into LA and watch how we flip shit. And they flipped it. And so Mario introduced us to, like, we met Mario through the Dust Brothers, but Mario also introduced us to Money Mark. And then our logo was done by Eric Hayes. I don't know if you know that, but go look at all those early 90s hip hop records. Eric Hayes did all of them. He did the Beasties. He did everybody's logo. King T, fuck you name it. And then we got Glenn Friedman, who he did our photos.
Wow.
I mean, we were all the way in. Like, we want to make sure that the Check Your Head fans check our record out, and that never happened. Get dropped. And then, after that, like, struggling, trying to figure out what to do. And then, like, I just like, fuck, I got to figure out what I really want to do. And then Manny was doing Distortion Felix, and I'm like, fuck, I think I kind of want to do this with him. So I started doing.
What year was that?
That was probably Manny was already doing it in like 90.
He was already. You didn't. He started the band.
He started the. He had already started the band.
So when the Locust played with him, when I met him, were you?
I was in the band.
Okay.
I played bass. Actually, it was like Locust, Distortion Fields Open, Locust at the drive-in. We went into at the drive-in's dressing room to ask him if we could go on late because there was nobody in the venue. And it's like, say we're supposed to go on at 8, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what time we were supposed to go, but we're supposed to go on at 8. There's nobody in the venue.
Yeah.
So we're like, look, can we go on at 8:15 and we'll just play 15 minutes instead of the 30 minutes? And I'm pretty sure it was Paul Drake, the tour manager, but they were all sitting there. And Paul Drake's like, nope, got to go on now. And so we're like, fuck, all right. We went on. We went on in front of no one. There was nobody there. Yeah. By the time we finished, there was people there. Yeah. And then, of course, when you guys went on, there was a shit ton of people
And
there.
we probably only played fucking maybe 25, 30 minutes.
Yeah. I remember, not to blow smoke, but I was floored by you dudes.
And we were a 5-piece then, too.
Right.
Not even.
And I remember telling man, I'm like, these motherfuckers are smoking everybody on this bill. Like, I was just like, fuck. I mean, I watched a little bit at the drive-in, but that wasn't my thing. But you dudes, I was like,
but that's an interesting.
fuck.
Thank you. But that's interesting to even say because if you think about like where you come from, like all these dudes shredding in like the 80s, you know, like in metal, and I think like at the drive-in fans, when we played with them, both as a 5-piece and a 4-piece, no one ever liked us, you know, except at the drive-in. People were just like, what the fuck is this? With the exception of Japan, because I think they're Japanese people are just the best or whatever.
Yes,
but any US shows, it was just like, why are we opening for this band? Like, they're really cool and we really like them, but like their fans were just like, fuck this, you know?
That's crazy. I mean, I remember that show People Be in India though. At that Troubadour show. So I do. And I mean, maybe because Manny and I were yelling our asses off, but I remember going, fuck. I remember thinking at that point, I'm like, I used to think Manny, what we did was pretty like crazy because it was just so onslaught of low end because he would tune his guitar down to A. And I'd be hella low and it's just fucking low end. But I saw you guys. I'm like, oh fuck, it's this kids play. Everybody else's kids play to this shit. This shit is fucking everybody up. And then I like just so I can get this in. Then cut to like probably the next time I think I see you guys is at the All Tomorrow's party, and I always tell people they came on and fucked everybody up at All Tomorrow's party. I remember just going. Like Jonathan and I was grabbing each other going, fuck, they're pretty much killing everybody right now. Like at least...
one that Mars Volta did.
Yeah, okay. At least with like intensity. Sure. Like, Diamanda, I'm not putting her in that same group of bands or whatever. I'm putting any bands that were like bringing a lot of intensity.
Sure.
And I was just like, you guys rolled and smoked everybody again. I was like, fuck, the Locust, dude.
But again, like you think about the aesthetic of it, because like the Locust did the ATP with Mike Patton and the Melvins, and we were more kind of in line with a lot, you know, like or Phantomos played, you know, and you're like, okay, that we weren't like the odd band necessarily, because the one that Mars Volta did, it was like, damn, we're a little bit brutal or too brutal for like most people, you know. I was because you can feel it or when you're playing, you know how it is. You look at the crowd and you're like, dude, these people are bummed, you know. And I mean I would see that, but the funny thing is too, like even I would like to move away from the Locust stuff, but I remember playing the show at the El Rey with I think Murder City Devils or something, and Omar and Cedric were there, and this is like kind of like when we were maybe about to go to Japan or something. We're do a real tour with I guess it was at the drive-in, and anyhow, they were like backstage and they kind of were like peering out by Gabe, and I remember like Cedric like cheering on like, you know, whatever Gabe was playing, and it was so funny because we're playing and I see the crowd. You know, Mercy Devils are great. They're old friends of ours, but people are, you know, we're just kind of like not that into it. And all of a sudden, there's like this huge reaction from the crowd. I turn around and I'm like, fucking Cedric. He's on stage, like next to Gabe, like headbanging and shit. And like the crowd responded to him, and we're like, okay, here we go. That makes sense.
That's awesome. Cedric kind of always gets the audience.
Yeah, I know. So it's crazy because I love Manny. He's a brilliant person, and I was so grateful that because I ended up working with him on some records with Retox and stuff, and really stoked that whole thing happened. So that's crazy. So you were doing the band with Manny, and then
and that was we did some touring, like our first record was put out by Johnny Temple from Girls Against Boys, and he had a label called Akashic Records. He still has Akashic Books, which is very, I don't know if you know, but like they put out like tons of really great books, top New York top sellers, but also, you know, he put out Les Claypool's book. He just put out the Garbage book. You know, he likes to put out, you know, bands books. Like if like they're telling a story or whatever. I think Omar at one point was going to put out his photo book. So Johnny's awesome, but he put out our first record, and so we toured with Girls Against Boys a little, and then we toured.
Was that a little rough too, though?
Nah, we were kind of more like, I mean, we were like. Back then, like, we were kind of a spectacle. Manny sang and ripped, but I used to go fucking bananas. And so it was like, you're always going to be, even if you don't dig the music, if you have somebody who's a spectacle, the audience is going to be kind of into it. So, you know, that's kind of the thing with our band. And then we toured with New Wet Kojak, which is Johnny and Scott from Girls Against Boys, other band. And then that's where I met Sugar from Buffalo Daughter. It was like, Distortion Felix, Buffalo Daughter, Girls Against Boys, I think, was the tour. And then, so it was cool, like just doing that stuff, and seemed like I felt that finally I was like playing music that I was meant to play.
Oh, sure.
And then I started my own band, Big Sur, which is kind of more, I mean, back then they used to call it trip hop, but I didn't even know what the fuck that music was. I just was into hip hop, and I wanted her to sing on it. I wanted to play bass on it, but it was drum loops. And I started that band with Tim from Rage Against the Machine. It was 2 bass. We wanted to do like a 2 bass thing, like Morphine. But
did you play
funky.
live like that?
He never played live with us. We just made a record together. So
did that thing play live though at some?
Yeah.
Without drums?
No, with drums. We had this friend of ours, Troy, played drums, but it was pretty much just a 3-piece. Lisa would play keys and sing, and then I'd play bass, and we'd have a drummer. And then, you know, so I was doing 2 bands. I was doing Distortion Felix, Big Sur. And then, you know, just sessions and shit. And then, you know, one day Manny was like, hey, these dudes are going to call you. Remember at the drive-in? Like, yeah. And I go, they have the news band, Mars Volta. You know, I saw them at a bar, and they were like, you know, saying, oh, they were bummed. They can't find a bass player. And I said, you should take my bass player. And they were like, why would you give up your own bass player? And he's like, because I think he would be perfect for you guys.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I get a call from Omar when he was in Europe, and they were coming home for a couple weeks in between like 6 weeks of Europe tour and then Chili Peppers run. And they were, I mean, from what I could understand, was auditioning me. But after the first day of auditions, I was like thinking like, well, there's somebody probably outside who's going to come in. I got to take my shit out, right?
Yeah.
And I go, should I take my shit? And Omar's like, no, you can leave it here, you know, bring it tomorrow. And I'm like, huh. And then I started thinking in my head, am I the only dude auditioning? You know, and
that was it, huh?
I mean, it's because like now as I know them, of course I was the only dude auditioning. They didn't want to like go through a cattle call. That's not their style. I went back the next day, played for a couple hours, and then after that he told me, you know, like I said, I go, hey man, I didn't play today. I didn't play as well today as I did yesterday. I'm gonna work on it for sure. And then he was just like, well, you better, because we have a show on Friday. And I'm like, oh, fuck, am I in?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I didn't tell you. Yeah, you're in. So,
and that was with John Theodore?
Yeah.
Did you already know him?
No. And I think I saw him because I'm pretty sure Manny and I played a show with Royal Trucks, and he should have been the drummer. I don't know if he was, but I don't remember. I don't think it was in San Francisco, and I didn't stay for the show because like my family's from out there, so I split right after we played. So he might have been there. I just knew he was in Royal Trucks before, but I knew of him. And then, first show was the Troubadour. Everybody that was into that, what we were doing at that point was there. Like Ian MacKaye was there, Rick Rubin was there, John Frusciante was there, System of a Down dudes were there, Weezer dudes were there. Like all these people, same thing. That thing that there's this band with heat, and then all these bands go to see it. You know, at the Troubadour again. And I was like, this is weird. And get this, the funniest shit of that night though was that it was my first show with them, and the whole night before I'm fucking ball tripping, like sweaty, just like. These dudes are going to fire me when they see the Racer X photo in the front bar. There's a photo of Racer X from the 80s that we all signed, and there's me with giant fucking poodle hair. And I'm like, they're going to fire me. Or they're going to just like flip out and go, wait, I think we made the wrong move.
Well, those guys have poodle hair too, though.
Well, but it was like, it was like, they're going to see how old I am. And so, anyway, so I'm walking up to the venue and I'm pretty nervous. And I see Jeremy, and Jeremy starts laughing. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And I go, the fuck? They saw the photo, right? And Jeremy's like, dude, don't worry. It's fucking awesome. I love it. I'm like, all right. And then I go backstage, up the stairs, dun, 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 take a left turn, open the door, screaming, laughing at me. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And then I'm like, man, dudes, you don't know how embarrassed I am.
So they just didn't know who you were or something?
Yeah, and Cedric's like, dude, we fucking love this. No, it's cool. Fuck yeah. No, don't worry. No, I was like, oh, thank God. Yeah. And, but they still thought I was their age. It wasn't until like a month into the band that I told them how old I was, and they couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Like Omar's like, I thought you were my age, maybe even younger. And I'm like,
what?
fuck, I'm 12 years older than Omar. I'm 10 years older than Cedric. And they couldn't believe it. So that was like my whole hidden past with them. And then they finally started figuring it out. And then
so who'd you replace? Because Flea was in the band.
Well,
right?
he made the record.
Yeah.
Eva was the original bassist on the EP.
Yeah. I remember.
And then they had their friend Ralph after her, and he didn't work out. And then they had this Rick Rubin's engineer, Jason Later. He did that European tour that they were on before I met them. And then I was in the band for 10 years. So.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And I was basically on tour for pretty much 10 years.
Wow.
Well, because when Mars Volta wasn't touring, I did every Omar solo tour, which we were always touring.
Sure.
So, yeah, it was some gnarly shit,
Yeah.
And going from like, oh, we're on this, Perfect Circle tour or whatever tour it was, Chili Peppers or System of a Down, and you're like, big arenas. And then Omar's like, all right, we're going to Europe next week. And then it's like, oh, we're in a van with like,
wait, we're going to Europe next week?
Yeah, like after, as soon as this tour's done, we're going to Europe for a solo tour. And then Omar, me, Marcel, maybe the horn dude, and, film people, and just we'd be all cramped in a van and we'd tour Europe for like 2 weeks. Come back, go back out with Mars Volta.
Wow.
Come home. Yeah, and it was like that for years. And fucking gnarly. He's because he was just addicted to being out on the road and constantly touring and working.
Sure. So I'm obsessed with drummers. Yeah. So did you do stuff with Zach Hill in Mars Volta?
Yeah, so we did this was after John was in the band. I think it was when Thomas might have been, or Blake. One of those dudes were in the band. But we always wanted to do a record with Zach Hill. And, I was friends with Zach too.
Yeah.
When we toured with System of a Down, Hella opened up part of the tour when they were 5-piece.
Sure.
So, but I knew of Zach through Manny because Hella was going to make a record at Manny's. So Manny gave me that demo, and I remember listening to the demo and going, what the fuck are
the demo before the first record?
Fuck, I want to say after that. I think this was like 2000, and John Theodore and I were listening to it before we made Francis the Mute. And he was like, whoa, dude, this is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like, this is hella gnarly. Yeah. So anyway, but we've known each other a long time, and Omar knew them, and we were big fans of Hella. And yeah, finally that came together. And so it was Jonathan, Hishke, me, Zach, Omar, and then Cedric put vocals on later. And then Sergeant House put that out. But that was awesome. The only thing I ever got to do with Zach Hill.
Yeah. He's such a great guy, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I played on a Frank Ocean, like on this last record, which one's this one called? Blonde. Right, Blonde. So there's a song on there that has Zach and me on it.
Frank Ocean.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's just because Frank had Zach go in, and they hit me up in the middle of the night, and unfortunately I missed the call because I was asleep. Yeah. And they were like midnight or something, and come to the studio. But I went on later, and I recorded on some stuff that Zach had played on.
Huh. And then what about Thomas Pridgeon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I found Thomas through...
you brought him into the band.
I mean, Omar and I would like look for drummers, but I was just more connected in the shredder musician world.
And there's a level that you have to match. You can't just get like a rock drummer.
Right. And, because John was insane. He was amazing. And so, when things were falling out between Omar and John, he was already bringing Blake back into the picture. So Blake was the original Mars Volta.
He was on the Tremula EP?
No. He never made it to a record.
Oh, okay.
And then he came in, and then he just didn't click with all of us. So then Omar's like, oh no, that's right. I had already found this guy. Well, Jonathan Hischke had told me about this guy, D'Antoni, and he's like, check this dude out on MySpace. I'm like, whoa, it's this thing called Asteroid Power Up. And so then we wanted to get rid of Blake. So, Ike and Paul and I would be like, hey, when Omar looks like he's walking onto our bus, play Asteroid Power Up. And we're like, yeah. And then Omar will go, who is this? And so sure enough, like fucking clockwork, Omar walks onto our bus and we're playing it. And he's like, who's this? And I'm like, that's that motherfucker D. This is the dude we need to get. Blake's not our drummer, you know?
Wow, and it was like that.
Yeah. And then finally, after it just wasn't working out with Blake, he's like, get a hold of D. And then D drummed for us on a Chili Pepper tour. But he had his own band. He wasn't ready to join. So then at that point, I had already had a couple other drummers that I had found. So Thomas was one of them. Thomas came in, well, somehow or another, like they loved him because there was only one video we can find at the time we met him where he's in his grandmother's basement and he's just ripping drums. And they were like, we want that. Cedric was like, I want that energy. So we got him, but Thomas is difficult to wrangle in. So it was always a lot of work. Sure. And then we went back to D'Antoni. And so then D'Antoni ended up doing the last record and last whatever touring that we did.
Yeah.
So
wow, it's such a crazy lineage of stuff. Even the Thomas Pritchard stuff is crazy. Like, and then you went and played in Trash Talk, and you're like, that's the weirdest thing. But so the funny thing is, when you were telling me about like when you were first playing, like those early shows at the Troubadour when you guys were all ripping and all the other people there to see you guys, and you guys were just like everyone shredding. That's kind of like how I felt when Mars Volta came about. You're like, I was like, how? I mean, like, because we liked it. We're like, dude, they're all ripping, but why is this appealing to the mainstream? Because we were really confused by that. Like, it made sense why At the Drive-In would be, because it has like, it's more hookier. And then we would play, the Locust would play these shows with Mars Volta and be like, what in the fuck is going on? Like, it's complicated music, and everybody's like that. I mean, there was obviously melody and there was great songwriting, but there was like this level of I guess like from the perspective like music theory or something. You're just like, this is an onslaught of just stuff, and
my whole thing with it, I always thought the reason why people were so into it is because it didn't come from musical knowledge, because Omar doesn't know where notes are on the neck. He doesn't give a fuck. He just writes straight from instinct. And he really resonates with really high level musicians like Questlove, like like the Roots used to play a riff that Omar wrote, that's on Francis and Mute. So you know what I mean? It's purely gut shit, and I think that's why he doesn't give a fuck about music knowledge or even shredding. He just knew he had to get shredders to perform whatever it is that he heard in his head. So you get someone like John, get someone like me. Everybody pull them together, and then, it got pretty noodly by the third record and
I couldn't.
Amputecture.
I mean, for me, like, I don't think the Locust stuff's that complicated, but there was times where I would hear like Mars Volta stuff come out and I had to sit down with it and like really try to study it, and like, so what was the first record you did?
Francis and Mute.
I mean, that record is one of them. I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, and the thing too, like, people would always ask, like, yeah, man, live, you guys would fucking go all over the place, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's kind of not that complicated. It's like, you play this part of the song, and then you jam for fucking 40 minutes. And then there's so many signals that you have to go to the end, and then you play the end. So you only really know two parts, the beginning and the end. The rest of it is just hookups, what we called hookups. Yeah. And it would just be like, you'd start knowing each other's wrists and like, oh, I know where Omar's going, or John would go, oh, I know where Juan's going, or I'd be like, oh, I know where John's going.
Yeah, sure.
And so we would just sit there and chase each other, and Ike and Marcel would just like texture outside of us, but us three were so loud, meaning the drums, the bass, and the guitar were so loud you couldn't hear anything else.
That's crazy, because I guess I would never see like you guys play consecutively. It'd always be like, here's a show, and then I would see those jams and just assume that it was like a rehearsed kind of thing, and be like, how the fuck is
When I joined the band, we used to do like a set list, and then like within that year or something like that, like we'd get the set list and it'd be like 2 songs. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is weird.
Yeah.
And it'd be like roulette dares and cicatrices. And I'm like, okay. And then in next day, it'd be cicatrices and roulette dares. And then, or whatever. It would just be like 2 or 3 song sets. And it was just like, stretch it. And I mean, I have no idea why they went into that zone, but they were into it. And
so then what would Cedric do? Because that seems like
dance,
it's almost like the hardest.
Yeah, he would dance and sing, climb on shit.
Yeah,
you
but
know,
that's
do
kind of crazy
shit.
too, huh?
Yeah,
you're the singer, and there's a 40-minute jam. You know, like what are you gonna do for 40 minutes? Like climb? I guess climb on a raptor.
And you ad lib and do a little bit of ad lib vocal, but he was into it. Like it was wild times. Like I'll never live through something like that again.
Yeah.
You know, stressful shit because it is just stressful being in a band like that with volatile, personalities and stuff, and everybody's just so intense.
Yeah.
And so. But, fuck, man, some of the memories, like, I just remember just like when we did like Big Day Out, for example, the first Big Day Out I did with them, every show we'd look to the side and there'd be fucking somebody famous watching us.
Yeah.
And we'd just be like, and they'd be into it. And we're like, whoa, this is weird. Like, oh, the Strokes are watching us. Why?
Yeah.
Who knows? There's Metallica. Well, that makes sense. But then, oh, there's MIA. Why is she watching us?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I don't know. All that makes sense to me.
Black Eyed Peas. Black Eyed Peas are watching us. What? Why? But Black Eyed Peas loved us.
Yeah.
They would shout us out in the mic and shit.
Yeah.
We were like, what? Black Eyed Peas are shouting out, our bros to Mars Volta. We're like, what? This is fucking weird.
Yeah. Well, they were probably like, we want that cool like credibility. Like we're friends with them, like.
And man, probably because they're stoners. So like stoners, when you're a stoner, man, you can listen to some fucking dumb shit and think it's good. I'm not saying we were. I don't mean it like a guy everybody's like, well, called no. But I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm high, I'll get into shit I would never get into straight. You know what I mean? I don't smoke weed.
Yeah.
But when I did,
yeah,
you hear shit differently. Definitely. At least I do.
That's a weird thing to think about. I always tripped out because in the Locust, everyone was into smoking weed except me. And I was like, there was so many times where jokingly they'd be like, dude, you got to start smoking weed if you want to make this like a real group. And I was like, I'm not going to smoke weed. I did like once or twice with them, but I was like, it's not my jam. But I would think like, I would sit there at rehearsal and I'd really like what we're writing. And I'm like, what the fuck are those guys thinking right now? Like all three of them are super baked and I'm not. But I felt like, we were all on this linear thing. But it's a weird perspective when you're not high.
To be honest with you, like Cedric wouldn't smoke before we'd go on because he had to sing. Omar didn't either. Like maybe so it would be like a 0.1% of the time. Like, I mean, Marcel and Ike would. And D'Antoni and Thomas would, but like those dudes didn't. I didn't. Like I can't. I gotta be. It's just so hard. My job, I always felt was. No, I shouldn't say it was the hardest, but it was definitely the most. You had to be the most disciplined because everybody's going ape shit, but me. So, and the drums are going ape shit, and who's gonna get first knocked off the boat? Me. So I couldn't get knocked off. And then, also.
So would you just kind of like watch the drummer like constantly?
Oh man, I used to stare at John's bass drum. I wouldn't even look at the audience. In the first year playing, I would just watch his bass drum.
Yeah.
And I'd stand, like I could feel the wind of his hi-hats. That's how close I would stand to him. And I just, for a lot of reasons, we wanted to be that tight, but we, because he goes, man, I wish you could just stand behind me. I wish you could just be as close as you could get to me. So I would just do that.
He's like, I wish you could just be inside of me.
Yeah, and I think that's how we got a lot of hookups and
sure.
but anyway, I knew when we went into in-ears, when we started playing with in-ears and clicks, like everybody, I'd see them get their mixes up and they'd like, all right, I need click, I need Juan. It'd always be that, I need click and I need Juan, and then myself or whatever that is, and if my amp went out, the entire band would flip and stare at me because fuck, where you're gonna go with the drums? They're not gonna tell you where you are in the song.
Wow, that's so wild.
You know what I mean? Like, and Cedric, if you see a lot of times he stands like in front of the bass rig because, he needs that's
visual cue.
Yeah, because Omar's going ambient or he's going crazy and the keys are going crazy, and so you need that bass and the drums are always crazy. So
that's so crazy. That's kind of like what the Locust did when we had like a line. We would set up in a line, and Gabe would be up front, because a lot of it for us too, having masks. We would need some sort of peripheral vision to, you don't want to. It was more aesthetic. You don't want to look at the drummer. So I'd always have to see his arm and his leg. Like always need to be able to see that. Yeah, it's crazy. And also too, as a singer, which I guess Cedric probably had the same thing. Like if you don't have like a good, because I've never had in-ears or anything, but like if you can't like hear the kick or see when something's about to land, like it sucks. And it's such a bummer to be a singer and to think like I gotta completely turn around and watch that guy. Totally. So if you have peripheral vision, you can see the bass player or hear or whatever, like then you're set.
And the bass kind of travels differently than all the high end shit, because everything sits in the treble world, but the bass gets its own thing. So if Cedric's standing by there, like it's easier to feel it and hear it, So
he would try to like position himself to actually get it.
I mean, he'd be running around, but if he had to sing some stuff like that, he would just, but anyway, John and I, that's when I started. I would face the drums. I never looked out at the Onyx. I would just face and stare at him. And I continued that the rest of the drummers. Then eventually, I got to the point where the music started to get it a little bit simpler and I didn't need to, but it's just it's just nice to be able to just be focused on that, because nobody's looking at me. They're always looking at Cedric and then sometimes Omar.
Yeah.
They're definitely, I'm the last motherfucker they're looking at on the stage. I don't even think the audience, so I used to tell people, like, I think people in the audience don't even know what the function of my instrument is. Like, what is that thing he's playing? It's bigger than a guitar, but I can't hear it. What the fuck is it? Yeah. It's this lute called the bass,
It's so funny talking to you about all this, because now I remember like seeing you guys play and watching the dynamic that you would have, with the drums. Like it's such a weird, because I would, as a bass player, I'd be like, whoa, that's crazy. Look at that connection that's happening right there. You can see it, if you know it. But if you didn't know it, you'd be like, whatever. Like, the guy with the hair that's fucking climbing up the the side of the stage or whatever.
Well, the other thing that we'd always do, like we'd come out and they would only let the photographers in the photography pit for half of the first song, then they'd have to get cleared out. But there would always be, they'd be all up on Cedric, it's like get the singer, and Omar would just be like, if they weren't on him, like, or like sometimes like it'd be like somebody else would be soloing or something, and Omar would just try to get the camera. I mean, this dude's soloing, and Cedric would be standing there drinking tea,
and they're taking photos of that.
Yeah, and they're taking pictures of that, and he's like, "Fuck, this horn guy's soloing."
Yeah,
fuck, you idiots.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah,
yeah. It's everything was always combative in the live shows, and I think as you gave it that energy, it was almost you almost look for that, like yell at the fucking monitor guy, get in fights with the security dudes. It's always like bring that all into it, The
energy makes it more intense. Yeah, that's interesting. So then the band disbanded. And
it's basically
you were in it till the end.
Yeah, well, I mean, 2012 is actually, this month is like or last month I guess it was June, I think, but it was like 5 years ago. So the band ended 5 years ago. I mean, I hear that they're going to do the band again. I'm sure they will. Yeah, but
you'll get the call. You're like, we have a show tomorrow.
No, I won't get the call. I won't get the call for a lot of reasons, but I'm sure they will do it. I mean, they should do it. Yeah. It's like, it's a great band, and I hope they do it, because it's like, it did fuck people up. I like anything that fuck people up, you know what I mean? And so, but yeah, just, you could tell it's like their communications, everybody's communication was fucked at the end. And so then I also heard that he was starting a new band, Bosnian Rainbows, and then Cedric was doing solo, and Cedric goes, hey, do you want to do the solo band with me? And I was like, I mean, what am I going to say? No. I'm not doing anything either.
So who was in that?
So in the beginning, it was Cedric and Johnny Polanski and me, and then we got this guy, Greg Rogov, who plays in Devendra Banhart's band. So he was our drummer, and then Johnny just couldn't afford to do it, and so we got Dan Elkin, who played in Hella. He played guitar, and Nate Walcott, who he's Bright Eyes Keys, and then he Desperados, I think, and then he's also in the Chili Peppers now playing keys, but he was a keyboard player. And so we made a bunch of recordings, and we did one run where it was Dot Hacker, who's Josh Klinghoffer, Hishke's band, and then Zavala's is what it was called. And we did one, 1 week or 1.5 week, 2 week run where we went up the coast. We opened for the Chili Peppers in Alaska.
Whoa.
And that was pretty much it. After what started happening is everybody started running out of money, and the guitar player, Dan, I was the first one. I started playing in Deltron 3030 because I told Cedric, yo, I'm running out of money. I'm going to do this Deltron 3030 thing. And he was cool. He was like, all right, I understand.
Yeah.
But then Dan, the guitar player, was like, oh, I just got a call from Broken Bells. I got to go do it. I still want to be in the band. And then that was just like not cool.
Wow.
And then next thing you know, he was doing that other band. Was that Travis? What's that band called? Animas.
Yeah.
Then he was he went to go do Animas.
Yeah.
And then so Zavala's never took off. And so then I spent.
Is there any records out or recordings?
No. There's recordings, but there's no
nothing
record
available. Yeah.
He'll probably put it out. I hope he does. And then
what is it like?
It started out. I mean, it was cool where it ended up, and it was really cool where it started. It was very 70s, kind of like Bread or something. Like very acoustic-y. His voice was just golden. It's just, he's like, I get these songs from him, and I'm just like, man, dude, you murder the mic. It's just beautiful. It got heavier because we had Dave, what was his name? The guy who produced he produced like one of the Tame Impala records and Flaming Lips. I forget his name right now. But anyway, he produces, kind of got us heavier sounding.
Yeah.
But which is cool. I really dig it. But it started out very acoustic-y. And
that's not what I was expecting to hear.
Not at all.
Yeah, wow.
Oh man, it's like most people I played it to, like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Like, he's just into that. He wrote all the songs, and then, but as it developed, we all started inputting more, so it started not sounding like that, and then the producer kind of got us to sound more rock, and then then it just fell apart, and then then I just continued to tour with Deltron. So I spent like 2.5 years playing in Deltron 3030, which is a hip hop group.
Yeah.
And so it's the Automator, who I know from the early 90s, that I used to record with him all the time. And we made, he made, but like I played bass on the first Dr. Octagon record. And he would always give me these like, hey, I'm going to go out and tour. Do you want to do this? And I'd be like, oh, either I could do it or I couldn't do it.
So is he on the first Dr. Octagon record or
Automator?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the producer.
Okay.
So he does.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's like the obvious. So he was like, this is my homie, have him play bass.
No, I mean, he was nobody when I met him. He was just producing, like doing remixes and shit. And so I was just playing on a ton of shit for him. And then he would just go make beats and shit. And then he'd make Keith, and he used some of that, but he had all this other shit he had. And so he made the first Octagon record, and after that, he blew up. I mean, we were rehearsing with the Scratch Pickles. It was like the original Scratch Pickles, so it was Mike and D Styles and fucking Qbert. One of the other original dudes.
Disc, was it?
Maybe, yeah, Disc. Yes, and so they were the band. I was on bass. Jim Greer, who's a pretty doing well producer right now. He was guitar, like utility dude. We had this dude playing percussion and flute. Automator played the beats and played violin. We had like break dancers who were going to break dance. We were going out on Lollapalooza. We had all this Beck touring we were going to do.
This is the Dr. Octagon.
Yeah, in the early 90s. And then Keith never showed up to rehearsals. We'd wait every day. Nope. I'd be up there rehearsing for like a week. No, Keith, go home. Come back a couple months later. Keith's here. Oh, okay, cool. Wouldn't show up. And then, so I'd never see him. And it never hit touring. Like, I got a call. No, it was like, I was flying out the next day, and I go, fuck, I don't have my boarding pass or any flight info. So I call the manager up. I go, hey, I need my flight info. And she goes, oh, shit, you didn't hear. And I go, what? She goes, we're not doing the tour. Everything's canceled. I'm like, what? Nobody told me. She goes, oh, I'm sorry. Nobody told me. And so I didn't go out on it. There was nothing to go out on. It was like Lollapalooza wiped, Beck dates wiped, all this shit wiped. And then, so the Automator continued to make really, great records, Handsome Boy Modeling School, Peeping Tom. He'd ask me to do tours, and sometimes I could do it, sometimes I couldn't. And he asked me to do Deltron in the beginning, but I couldn't. And so he got this other dude, and then he made the first Deltron record.
So when did you come in, on the second record?
No, yeah, the second record, and that's it. And the second record's 10 years after the first record, so it's like completely different.
I didn't realize that.
I mean, he called me his manager called me for the Gorillaz when he was doing that, to play bass when he did the first Gorillaz record. They didn't do much touring with that.
Are you on that record?
No, I did. I'm not on that record. He didn't use any real musicians, I don't think, on that record. And then we finally reconnected 10 years later when he was touring on the Deltron record, and then we cut a new Octagon record, and so that's what I've been touring on this year.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like hip hop's weird. Like Octagon just got like one of the most anticipated records coming out in hip hop, which is cool by Rolling Stone though, not like Source or something.
Yeah.
But it's always appealed to the other audience.
Sure.
I think the Keith I think way more into the whole idea of the band and that kind of concept where he wasn't into that in the beginning. I remember they told me like somebody had said something like, why don't you want to do the touring like Lollapalooza touring back in the 90s, and he was like, I don't want to play for a bunch of corny white kids, or something like that was like the thing they told me, and I was just like, it's just like now it's
That's
just
a
like
great answer though.
Yeah, because he didn't understand who was falling in love with his, like he was like fucking New York rap, and it's like, did you see that Dre thing recently? The what is it? It's Dre and Jimmy Iovine HBO special.
Oh.
It's the same thing. Like they interview Snoop and they were like, "Oh, hey Snoop, we want you to be on the cover of Rolling Stone." He's like, "Fuck Rolling Stone. I want to be on the cover of the Source. Fuck, blah blah blah." And then next thing you know, it's like he's on the cover of Source. He goes, next thing you know, all these white kids are like, know who I am. Because they don't think that people are going to be into them, and then they are. You know what I mean?
But I remember like kind of discovering the first Dr. Octagon, and it was like all my punk friends were kind of into it. I think maybe even Sonny K turned me onto it or something. When it first came out, and I was like, dude, this is weird. And you listen to it. There's like even a shout out about Spaz on that record or whatever.
Yeah, and then there's also like Puzzhead did the artwork, like on the new record. The guy from Exodus, Gary, who's in Slayer now, he was on the new record.
So are you on the new record?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like it's dark, it's heavy, but it's hip hop, and it's Keith, and he's wild on the mic, and
that's the thing is too. I was like, these lyrics are so fucked. I don't understand them, and that was kind of like that to me. I was like, this is like these are like these weird metaphors and like shit that wasn't obvious, which I feel like, no offense to hip hop in general, but a lot of the lyrics are pretty obvious, and I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And I felt like I was listening to like all the Airborne Radar or like all the weird shit that we were all into, like
he's a super stream of consciousness. I mean, I was around when they were cutting the vocals for the second record recently, and I was just like, fuck, he's just like, it's just like, you can tell it's like what's coming in his head is something that he's taking in at the moment or in that time frame of when he's making the record. So he's just, he's dope. He was, and he like on tour, he was fucking busting out. I didn't know he was a fucking like legendary breaker.
Yeah.
And so he starts breaking his shit live, and I'm like, what?
I saw some of that video.
Yeah, dude, it was dope. And then be around Qbert, like fuck, because he's the DJ in Octagon, man, he's ripping it, just fucking. It was, dude. It was like, cause I just like once I got into hip hop, I would listen to other shit, but hip hop was always the first thing I'd go for.
Yeah. And there was a live drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Full live band.
And so it was just like it's just weird to, and I still do Deltron shows. We have some coming up in September. Still doing Octagon, like we're playing Outside Lands, but. I finally got to do hip hop. Now I get to do more hip hop. I play on a lot of hip hop shit now. Like LA rap shit and. Which is cool, it's always what I wanted to do. Like I kind of just got out of, after playing, Mars Volta, even though I was still doing some hip hop stuff, not as much. Now I just get to do hip hop. I'm a fuck yeah. It doesn't pay as much as being in a rock band, but fuck, it's what I want to do.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Huh.
And it's like I continue, like I'll get calls from producers, like like Mario will call me up or whoever, like they need. Bass, and I know how to play that style of bass.
Sure.
Wow,
that's great.
So we'll see. Like right now, slow year. Like I'm all fuck. I hope one of these dudes wants to tour. More than what we're doing.
So let's take a little bit of a jump to the pedals and effects thing. So like, how did you start that? And also, did Nick also start it with you? Or?
No. Okay. I started it 5 years ago. I saw that the band was gonna end. Mars Volta meaning, and so I built a studio, and I, just said I got to keep myself busy. I figured I'd, have, whatever project I could record in there and rehearse in there. And then I thought I'll shoot this thing. I was on tour with Mars Volta last year, and I was like, I came in, like we were backstage bored out of our fucking minds, and I was like, pedals and effects, huh? And I Googled it, and nobody had it. I'm like, fuck, I bought it right then and there. I'm like, fuck, I'll start a review site, because all review sites are guitar oriented at that time, 5 years ago. I'll be the first dude who does a legit bass one, like a bass like I play bass, like play some wild ass shit. Dudes will get like. I'm trying to help like bass players go, you don't have to just play traditional bass and then be unemployed the rest of your fucking life. Like, let's elevate the fucking instrument. You know what I mean? And so I started my site, and it was all right in the first couple of years. I don't make a lot of money. I do banner ads and shit, and then I was like, I gotta have guitar. And then Nick moved to LA, and he came into the studio, and I filmed him, and I've never seen his band or anything. Whoa. I just knew he's dope. Everybody told me, like Zach Hill told me, they call him the Kid, and they go, the Kid's fucking ripper. Jonathan would tell me. He came in, he started ripping shit in front of me, and I'm like, dude. And I started to go, no, we're not going to interview. I want to just video you doing this. And so that video did really well, and he kept doing them. And I said, hey, do you want to do these with me? Because I need a dude who thinks like me, but on guitar, to do the reviews. And he's like, fuck yeah. So now, we do them together. Then he started inputting on content. He was like, let's do 100 pedals. I'm like, that's a great idea, because every time I do clinics, kids go, what does it sound like when you turn them all on? And I'm like, it sounds like shit, you dumbasses. But then it's like, actually, I don't mean it that mean. But I'm like, in my head, I'm just like, don't you know? But then I'm like, fuck, maybe they don't know. So then I was like, you're right, Nick. So we plugged in 100. 20, 40, 60 sound cool. 70 started getting a little crazy. After that, it's all white noise. Sounds like shit, but the video went viral, and then that skyrocketed us to a new level. We were like, dope.
So that was like the first huge
viral
one.
We got like 300,000 hits in like a week.
Wow.
And then
it's funny, it really reminded me of like the 77 drummers and those things. So I was like, wow, it's like that, but with pedals. So it seems like more, a little bit more cohesive.
And it just gets wilder with Nick, and he has such great ideas, and so we try out shit. We got a lot of shit like we're gonna do, and then anybody who's building wild shit wants to get the pedals to us, because they know that our audience will buy shit without question. It's not even so much because they like our musicianship. It's just because they trust our taste. And so they'll just be like, oh fuck, I can post a photo of something, and then that maker will go, fuck, I just got like 10 orders by you just posting a photo. I'm like, because kids just like, oh, I trust this dude. He knows what's up.
It's so funny when we did the episode together, and we talked about that shitty Boss distortion overdrive. You're like, watch, this is gonna sell. I'm like, fuck, that's crazy. Like, that sucks, because I'm not like the biggest Boss fan. It wasn't even like something I sought out. It just kind of like stuck with me or whatever.
I mean, it's kids, because they don't, like they're out there, and the YouTube world's all new to people. It's still, I think, very frontierish. Like, yes, there's things that are very established, but it's still frontierish to where like you can find out a lot of shit on that fucking thing. So like, oh shit, I didn't know there was a pedal that made that sound. Because most of these dudes are just wanking on a fucking blues lick. And Nick and I are trying to figure out how flipped out can this fucking pedal go, and how do you use that in a band and shit. Like, a lot of times I'll go out there and I'll wild out on a hip hop track. That's a bass synth sound that they can't get with any synthesizer. But so I'm try to help all these kids move into a world where they can keep working, as opposed to like, if you keep just playing straight bass, you're limiting your opportunities.
It's almost, I mean, your effects are almost as important as the bass you're playing or whatever. It's crazy. And I always trip out on like what brought me into like really playing bass was No Means No, and how it was like such upfront, and it was like this sort of, it wasn't like done, I mean, it wasn't like weird sounding necessarily, like the tone of the bass, but it was such a like, kind of like, it wasn't just the background instrument, it was like front. But then I remember like kind of getting the bass, but even like more recent stuff, like even thinking about like the bassist for Lightning Bolt, Brian, like his rig is like, no offense to his rig, but it's like junk. But that makes it so fucking cool and innovative, and like, or even like going beyond the bass, like bands like Black Dice, like all their shit was just like, you just look at it and you're like, it looks like like garbage. But
I remember seeing Vaz and that dude's rig, and I just be like, is that shit gonna make it through the set?
Totally,
but it's
yeah.
just like, you just deal with the shit going out and whatever. I mean, when Mars Volta, I think at the peak of my pedals on stage, I think it was like 42. So imagine you're going to 42. You're going to have something that's going to go down.
So you did that, huh?
Fuck yeah. I had 4 like 3.5 foot pedal boards on stage. So I had one facing the drums, one facing the audience, one behind me facing Ike, and then one on top of my rig. So
and you used all of it, or just in case?
Hell yeah, because we were like, because there's so much in between, and there's so much like, okay, now we just do Space Jam for 10 minutes. So it's like, all right, here I go.
And so you could do whatever.
Yeah, for 10 minutes, he's dropping shit, boom, 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 so that was cool, and then by the end, we were like cutting back, you can't bring 4, you can bring 1, and then it was like, all the gear shrunk, but like at that time, I think they told me like I had more weight in the touring than anything, more than the drums, which is ridiculous for bass, but I had 2 big bass rigs, 4 giant pedal boards, 6 basses, backup heads, backup speakers. They were just like, fuck, you need all this? I'm like, it's just in case. It's just like, if you're going to let me go crazy, I'm going to fucking bring it all, So it was rad. But yeah, it was all from that spirit of just trying to like, just be innovative or just, something new, whatever, Wow. It's the same thing with hip hop, same with everything I like. I just like shit that does new shit. I'm not a nostalgia dude. I mean, I'll listen to like Motown and stuff if I want nostalgia, but like anything new, like I want to hear something I haven't heard yet and then have me get excited. Same in cinema or anything. You just want to, progress.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
It's like I said, I know this is a tough time in the world, but like I can't believe people are afraid of progress. I mean, not most people we know, but wherever the fuck else in this country that they don't want us to progress. Yeah. It's like, no, that's what it's all about. Like we're supposed to fucking move forward.
Yeah, sure.
But music too. Music should be moving forward. Like I don't want it stuck. I want to, I swear I get in all the time because I'm older, like I get in these music schools or some shit, and there's always the old dudes going, oh, these new kids just put on YouTube and learn how to play. I had to do it on a record. And I'm like, fuck you. They got the tech, they have the new technology.
Yeah.
Let them, they're gonna create new shit that you would have never come across on a fucking vinyl. You know what I mean? Like if it's YouTube, fuck it. Yeah, you can learn how to play an instrument at the highest level just watching YouTube.
Yeah.
Fuck yes. Fuck, I wish I had it.
Yeah.
They're just sour grapes. Me, I'm just like, yo, kids, use YouTube, get better, faster, and do new shit. Totally. Give the world new shit.
It's funny that you said that because I remember when I was younger and I first got a bass and I went to one lesson and then the instructor was like, you can't play it with a pick. And I was like, why? I want to play it really fast. And he's like, bass players don't do that. And like I remember kind of walking out of there being like, what the fuck? Like I'm pretty sure all the bands I like, but I couldn't. There was no YouTube. There was no internet.
Right.
But I went home, looked through all these like old punk magazines and stuff, and I'm like, those guys are all playing a bass. Like, there's no fucking way about that.
Awesome.
It's such a weird thing.
Yeah, we had to do that. We had to magazines. All information was slower. Sure. Now they just like go, I'm into whatever.
It's like they want to. It's like the current administration being like, we're going to have all these coal mining jobs. It's like, that shit's dead.
You're a
like
dumbass.
The old way of even looking at music is dead. I mean,
right.
You have the ability to, I think it's one thing that, like have like the analog argument or something, but like music theory and what people are capable of as far as musicianship, or not even like, because musicianship is such a, it's such a vague thing too, because it's art, it's subjective. Like musicianship to one person can be garbage to the other. I mean, dude, I've read more reviews of the Locust than not, where they were like, that is garbage. I could do that with fucking one hand. And it's like, yeah, right, dude. I could barely do it with 2. I would love to see someone do it with 1. Whatever. So it's crazy to think about that, because that was kind of like going back to the whole Mars Volta thing too. I was like, geez, how come this is acceptable on such a mainstream level? Like, like with the Red Hot Chili Peppers in is an example. I was thinking like, there's no way people are liking that band on tour with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, just because of their fan base. They're the ones that are like, like I said, like trying to keep their coal mining jobs or whatever.
We definitely get booed, and long haired faggots, flipping us off, throwing coins, which is always the worst. Coins hurt. You know what I mean?
Better than bottles. That's a
but it was like we definitely got booed. I mean, I can't even remember if there was ever a show where people were stoked on us. I mean, one show D'Antoni couldn't do was a Halloween show in Cleveland, and so we had to make up a plan. So the plan was fly out Thomas Pridgeon and have him just like not know we were going to let him play. And hey, we're going to go jam in this back room. And so Omar had this riff, and we worked on that riff with him. And he's like, you like that riff? And Tom's like, yeah, it's cool. And he's like, cool, we're going to go play it on stage. He's like, what, right now? And it's like, yeah. So we go out there. It was just a riff. Cedric had no lyrics or anything. Cedric goes out into the audience while we play this riff for like 30 minutes. So you just see like Cedric throughout the arena, just beers in the air. He just grabbed people's beers out of their hands. Yeah. And in the air they would go. I'd see him all the way at the back of the arena, beers up in the air.
And no one like kicked his ass or anything?
They're booing. They're, fuck, what is this? Ah, fuck you. You know, and Cedric was just like in their face, just doing his fucking
Did
thing.
he sing at all?
Not a fucking note. I mean, you know, he might have, no, I mean, take that back. He sang like for a second in the beginning, just, you know, ad-libbing. And then it was like, so mic up in the air, out in the audience, you know?
Wow.
And we did that shit a lot. Like, you know, if he was like getting sick, he would just like sing a little, go out in the audience, start fucking throwing shit, doing
that's great.
shit. You know?
I mean, you watch like, there's that whole Red Hot Chili Peppers, I think it was like on some MTV show where you see them like throwing their instrument, like they're not playing, they're lip, you know, performing. Right. And I was like, damn, that's really cool. So they must get it to some extent. Yeah. But that's wild because I did these stupid shows with the Bloody Beetroots, and it was like, you know, it was like 15,000 people or something, and I remember, you know, those guys, the Bloody Beetroots, like, you have to stage dive, you have to be punk, and you know, all this garbage. It was stupid. But point is, I would go out in the audience, and people start fucking punching me in the dick. And like at one point, I mean, I had one pair of shoes. This motherfucker takes my shoe off. And I'm like, dude, that's not happening. Because we were about to get on a plane and fly to another festival. And so here I am. Like, my whole objective is like, that white pasty motherfucking Australian guy has my van, my slip-on van. And I was just fucking him up. Like, give him my shoe, dude. I can't believe this, you know? And like, so how does Cedric, you know, like, it seems like Red Hot Chili Pepper fans would be just like relentless, especially if you're throwing people's beers. I was just singing. I just staged over and singing. I'm like, no, that guy stole my shoe.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like,
know, one of the craziest ones I remember was we played Madison Square Garden 2003, and we finished playing, and we're walking off, and there was this group of dudes as we're walking off stage left, going, and they were yelling, and John starts fucking flipping them off, and they were like blah blah, and John starts going, I mean, they were flipping John off, so John flipped them off, and then they started going, come here, fucking, and John's like, you come here, and he's like pointing him to come down, and they start coming down, and of course our crew's like, get the fuck off, what are you guys doing? But I'm like, I just, you know, I'm only in the band for like 3 weeks, and I'm just like, what the fuck, this is, and then, you know, like multiply that by, I don't know, 30 times that it happened where opening up for Perfect Circle, and Omar takes his guitar off and, you know, swings it at, like, he knows he's not going to hit the dude, but that dude doesn't know. And so you see the dude getting on, and Omar's laughing at the guy for like getting all scared. I think that was in Amarillo, Texas.
Well,
and, you know, and we would get booed all the time. You know, Europe, it would happen. It just, you know, it's because it was different.
But I mean, that's when you were opening, you were never like that.
And again, like that's what I loved about that band, man. When I joined it, I was like, this shit is dope. One, it's fucking Latino dudes, of course, and John's and Ike weren't, but like the front dudes were Latino dudes, and I was like, that's dope. Sometimes the lyrics are in Spanish. That's dope. And then they don't give a fuck, and they're like wearing tight pants and bell bottoms, you know, and shit. And I'm just like, if people are calling them faggot and whatever, and I'm just like going, it's all constantly, it was like, fuck you to the audience, constantly. Oh, you don't want us to play fucking one song? We're gonna play one song.
Totally,
it was testing them. You know what I mean?
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna see that, I'm sure, with Mike. I mean, when you start doing your Dead Cross shit.
Oh, sure.
Oh, somebody told me like the last thing he toured, one of the bands, Tomahawk, whatever, he plays something at the beginning before they go on. It's like 15 minutes just to fucking test the audience. People get like upset. Because the Automator is really good friends with Mike. And he was like, Mike just like loves to fuck with the audience. And
that's great.
And like somebody I know was there, and they said they knew he was going to do that, but he said, you watch the audience, and it's like, the fuck is this music? I forget, it's like maybe some kind of African chant or some shit. It gets louder, and
he did it when Retox toured with Tomahawk, but it wasn't that annoying. But
really,
but if I was like a regular person, probably like be like, this sucks.
Right, you know? Exactly. That's what I mean. Like if you're, you know, Square, one of the Square fans, you're gonna be like, fuck this. I mean, Deltron 3030, we play this tennis match that goes on for like 15 minutes. It's like punk, because eventually it ends on 30-30, but But it's just like to test the audience. Automator does that same shit. It was just like watching people getting like irritated. Like, is this fucking gonna end?
Yeah.
And it's just, boom. Oh, what a great shot. You know, it's just like that kind of tennis talk.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny, but fuck, I'm sure like I'd probably eventually go, all right, get the fuck on the stage.
You played the audio of a tennis match.
Yeah, before we go on. Punk. And
That's
then the
great.
commentary is what's the funniest. It's just the way they talk about it. And, oh, did you see that? You know, because I think it's two women games. So it's just kind like you can take it sexually.
Yeah, sure.
So it's pretty funny.
Wow. Man, that's great. Thanks for listening to Cult and Culture. Stay tuned for our next episode.
Cult and Culture is a Ruinous Media podcast, proudly sponsored by Earthquaker Devices, Heartwork Coffee, Fender, and Diodario.
Planet B.